It is finally time to set our goals for 2026. I am absolutely thrilled. New Year's is my favorite holiday, actually, and my favorite time of the year. Today, I'm going to be showing you how I set my goals for 2026 and just for any year in general. So, if you like doing your goal setting with another person, or if you're just interested to see how other people do their goal setting, then just keep watching. So the first step in my personal goal setting process is brain dump all the potential goals I think that I might want to work on throughout the year. For me personally, I kept a list in the notes app on my phone so that immediately when I think of an idea, it can go straight on the list and I don't have to worry about forgetting it. And this list is essentially a brain dump. You're not trying to critically think about each goal and if it's actually achievable. You're just trying to write it down so that you don't forget about it, and then you can think about it later on in the process. Typically, I will start this brain dump or this list in December, but if you have not started a list or a brain dump yet, it's totally fine. You might already have a list in your head anyway, you just haven't written it down yet. But if that's you, if you do not have a list yet, I would pause here and do your brain dump for as long as you need and then come back for the next step. Okay, so hopefully you have your list or some sort of brain dump. So here's my brain dump. Like I said, I usually keep this list in my phone, but I airdropped it to my computer so I could show it to you. But I have quite a few things on my list, as you can see. And now the next step, once we have our brain dump, once we have our list of goals, is to sort our list into categories. So goals that are related to each other. Some really common ones would be career goals, financial goals, health goals, but you might have some off-the-wall categories that are very specific to you and your life or your job. Like if you're a musician, you might have performance goals, like I want to do this number of performances or I want to perform at this place. If you're a writer, you might have writing goals. If you are learning a language this year, you might have a specific category for all of your language learning goals. And don't feel like you have to have goals in a certain category. You don't. Your categories are going to fit around the goals that you already have. You're not going to try to make up more goals just because you don't have any goals in a certain category or you don't have enough goals in a certain category. That's not what we're doing here. No categories are required. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and organize all of my goals into categories. Okay, once you have organized everything from your list into a certain category, then and only then are we going to start thinking critically about each goal individually. We're thinking about things like, do I actually want to achieve this, or have I been influenced by my social media feed to think that I want this? For instance, do I really actually want to run a marathon because I think it will be fun and fulfilling, or do I want to run a marathon because people I'm following on social media have been running marathons? Or another example would be in your career goals, for instance, are you coming up with your own career goals, or are you just writing down things that your boss or your manager wants from you or is asking for you? If you realize that something doesn't actually resonate with you, or if something seemed like a really fun and cool idea at the time when you were doing your brain dump, but now that you're actually thinking about it, you don't really want to do, now is the time to just remove that from your list, and it's totally okay. And if you feel like, well, maybe I actually do want to do this, just not right now, you don't have to remove it from your list and forget about it forever, but put it on a different list. Maybe this can be something you work on next year or another time in the future. You're also thinking about things like, is this realistic for me to achieve this year? Do I have too many goals? Looking at mine, I think I have like 3 pages of goals. So that's probably too many. That's probably more than I will be able to accomplish in a year, so I might end up wanting to remove some of those. We're also being realistic about numbers. Maybe you put, I want to save $50,000 this year, but you only get paid by your job $50,000 each year. Okay, so that's not necessarily a realistic financial goal unless you have another side hustle or another income stream. So you might want to lower that number. Or if your screen time is currently at 8 hours and you want to get it down to 1 hour per day. That might be a little too much. That might be pushing it a little bit. You might want to start with something like 5 hours a day or 4 hours a day. So, next on the list, we are going to be going through each goal, thinking critically about it, make sure we actually want it, and make sure it's actually achievable. Okay, at this point, our goals should be shaping up. I do want to note that within your categories, you might have seen this during my process just then, but sometimes within a category, it's useful to organize your goals even further. You do not have to do this. This is just if it might help you keep things even more organized in your head. For instance, for my financial goals, there is a very clear timeline. Like, I want to do one of them first before I move on to the others. So I put them in chronological order. But my financial goals are the only category where that would be relevant. Another example is down in my relationship goals, I put in parentheses whether it related to friends, family, or my relationship. And then down in my hobby goals, I put in bold what the hobby itself is. And then underneath that, I put what the goal is related to that hobby. And then finally, in my miscellaneous goals, I had a few groups of like mini categories. So I have some goals related to car smarts, like things I want to know about my car, but I don't already know. I didn't really know what to call this one. I ended up calling it aesthetics, but like ear pierce, tattoo, hairstyle, those were sort of related to each other. I've got potential new hobbies, some business adjacent things. Also, this is a completely random side note, but in my head, that word is pronounced adjacent, and I really have to work hard to say adjacent. Really weird side note, but yeah. And then at the bottom, I have an other category within my miscellaneous. So it's like miscellaneous within the miscellaneous category. So yeah, within your categories, you might have subcategories or ways that you can organize your goals even further so that they make more sense to you. But that's not a requirement. It's purely just based on the way that your brain works and the way that your brain wants things to be organized. The last critical thinking step that I like to do is just go through and ask myself, do any of my goals conflict with other goals? So last year I had a savings goal. I wanted to end the year with a certain amount of money in savings. And to do that, I was reducing a lot of my extra spending. But I also had a goal where I wanted to get a Spanish tutor. And Spanish tutors obviously cost money. So those are two goals that would conflict with each other. Another example of this would be if you want to reduce the screen time on your phone, but you also want to increase the amount of short form social media content that you post for your small business. Those two goals conflict with each other. Now, if you do find goals that conflict with each other, you might not find any that conflict with each other, and that's great. But if you do, don't freak out. One option is obviously to take one of the goals off, but if you really don't want to do that, what I would suggest doing is prioritizing which one is more important to you. So going back to the example with the Spanish tutor, if your Spanish goal is a higher priority than your savings goal, then that means you are still going to pay for the Spanish tutor, even if that means you're not going to be able to meet your savings goal. But on the other hand, if your savings goal is a higher priority than your Spanish tutor goal, then you are only going to pay for a Spanish tutor if you have made enough that month to set aside what you want to be saving. If you did not make enough that month, then you're not going to pay for your Spanish tutor that month or at all. Another thing you could do, going back to the screen time example, you could have a specific exception that allows your conflicting goals to coexist. If you do want to be posting more short-term, if you do want to, that was crazy. If you do want to be posting more short form social media content for your small business, odds are you're recording it on your phone, you're editing it on your phone, and you're posting it from your phone. So these are things that are going to increase your screen time, but there are certain screen time apps where you can make an exception. So if you're using a certain app, that doesn't actually count towards your screen time. So you might change your screen time goal to say, I want to have 3 hours or less of screen time on my phone, not including this specific app that I use to edit my short form social media content for my small business. That way you don't have to get rid of either one of your goals, even though they're conflicting with each other. You just make an exception so that both of them can coexist. So again, if you do find goals that conflict with each other, you can either remove one, you can prioritize which goal is more important, or you can make a specific exception so that both of the goals can coexist. So I'm going to go through my goals and see if any of them conflict, and if so, then we will deal with that when we get there. Okay, I luckily didn't have anything that necessarily conflicted with each other. I think the only thing that I really thought might conflict is, my main source of income right now is substitute teaching. So this summer, I won't necessarily have a job. So one of my goals is to have a fun summer job, something that would be enjoyable to me, ideally like working in a bookstore or in a cafe, something that I think would be fun to do just for a couple months. But summer is also probably about the time where I would go on vacation. So those two things could potentially conflict with each other, but they won't inevitably conflict with each other. So I think we're fine there. I just need to keep that in the back of my head. But other than that, I don't think I found anything that strongly conflicts. I even found a few things that will help or supplement other goals in some ways, so that's really cool. But I think these are my official 2026 goals, so I'm going to remove the word brain dump from the title, and we're just going to call it 2026 goals. And here's the thing, once we get to this point in the goal setting process, I feel like people stop here. They're like, okay, I have my goals, they're organized, I've thought critically about each one, I know that I want to achieve all of these things, so now I'm done. And in some ways, yes, you might be done with the actual goal setting, but what I think is so important to do next, the next part of the process, is having a very loose plan for how you're going to achieve these things. In my experience, if I just set goals at the beginning of a year and I don't have a plan for how I'm actually going to achieve them, they just don't get achieved. Mostly because I've forgotten about them, or because if I happen to look at my list, I get really intimidated because there's lots of things on this list. But what I think it's really important to do next is have a super loose plan. A very loose timeline or due date. I really want to emphasize that this is a loose plan. It can change, and it probably will change over the year, and that's totally okay. So what I like to do when I'm picking a timeline or a loose due date is just pick a quarter of the year where I want this thing to be started by or finished by, if that applies. If it's a habit goal, something you want to be doing every day, then you're choosing a quarter where you want to start that habit or focus on that habit. And I want to give you a really gentle reminder that if you have like 10 habit goals, it can be really hard to start 10 brand new goals all at the same time. So I would recommend not starting them all in January. Maybe do 1 or 2 in January and then add more throughout the year once you get used to the first habits that you've added. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight each goal, and each color will be related to a quarter of the year. So the last thing I'll do for my goal setting today is just highlight everything based on the quarter that I think at this moment in time I want to start it by or finish it by. Okay, so at this point, you hopefully have a very loose plan about either when you want to start something, finish something, or begin focusing on something. And that process is going to be so helpful for your brain, because now if you look at your yearly goals list, you're not immediately overwhelmed and intimidated by everything you want to accomplish in a calendar year. So once I have my yearly goals broken down into quarters, and again, this can change. This is not set in stone. There are no rules. You can change this at any time, and you can still remove goals or add goals anytime you want. But once your yearly goals are organized into different quarters of the year, at that point, you don't really have to look at your yearly goals list anymore. And I know that feels counterintuitive because we just spent all this time and energy on thinking critically about each of these goals and making plans and getting excited for them. But if you're anything like me, I think it's really good to not look at that yearly goals list again until you're sitting down to do another planning session. So from this point on, what I look at is my quarterly planning. From here until the end of March, that's what I'm looking at, and that's what I'm focusing on. I don't go back and look at my yearly goals because I don't want to get overwhelmed, I don't want to get intimidated, and I don't want to lose my focus on what I've already decided I want to work on in quarter one. So if you're doing some version of monthly planning, I would highly suggest not looking at your yearly goals again until the beginning of February. And then once you've looked at it during your February planning session, don't look at it again until March. We do want to keep our goals in the back of our minds, yes, but we don't want to get so overwhelmed by everything we still want to do that we end up freezing and losing momentum for the things that we've been working on. And with that being said, I do have a quarter one planning video coming up very soon. So if you're interested in planning out your quarter one with someone, then stay tuned for that video. Thank you so much for watching today and for sort of celebrating my favorite holiday with me. I really love goal setting so much, and I look forward to it so much every single year. So thank you for being here with me today for this video. I wish you the very best of luck achieving all of your goals in 2026. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!